Now, without further ado, let's bring on the man of the hour, who's our new weekly crossover guest. There he is. Let's put him in his correct box. Let's take away my little lower third. What's your name, sir?
My name is Javier Reyes. Feeling good, feeling great. And I'm happy, man. 2 weeks straight doing this new crossover partnership, and I'm really excited about it, man. I think we have a good vibe going ever since the early days of our wagers. Remember when we used to do those? Now I'm the one who might not be able to do them anymore. Oh my gosh, at this rate, man. And I can't wait to talk about how good your team's been. I feel like this episode will be relevant.
And no more Mad Bum to lose those wagers from me, because it was usually betting on the days he started. And then you give up like 6 runs. And it's like, all right, Mad Bum, stop giving up home runs, please. But thankfully, we don't got to worry about him anymore. He's been sent to greener pastures. Hey, if you're a San Diego Padres or looking for a little extra pitching depth, I know a World Series veteran on the open market right now that you guys could go pick up in Madison Bumgarner. Just think about it. Right? Yeah. Well, I think for today's podcast, Javi, we're getting close to MLB All-Star season. I think it's kind of weird because the All-Star game's like the second week of July, but the voting like wraps up like next week. It wraps up like June 22nd. I think because they want to make a whole spectacle, show the finalists on MLB Network, yada, yada. But they did drop the first wave of MLB ballot drops this week, just like the presidential election. We got the first wave of drops coming in. Stop the count for some of these people, but for some of the other players, I'm like, we're going to need a second round of ballot drops to make sure these guys get in. So before I get into my whole spiel about the MLB All-Star ballots and the voting, were there anybody that stood out to you at any certain positions where you're like, whoa, how did that player lead his position in All-Star votes? Or you're like, whoa, how did that guy not get enough votes to lead his position?
I will say that I imagine I'll throw in a little bit of American League stuff in there. Nothing really all that crazy. Tiny one from the American League. I was just surprised that Randy Arozarena, just through sheer just awesomeness of the WBC and the fact that he's always been a solid player, but it feels like this year he's been like really great as well for the season. So I was a little bit surprised by that one. But for the National League,
Javi, who stole his spot though? Let's bring that up. Who stole Randy's spot? There's one guy in the top 3 right now who doesn't belong. Who is it, Javi? Say his name.
I refuse to do this. I'm not allowing your propaganda. He's gonna be bad in like 3 years, and you're gonna be like, "See, I told y'all 6 years ago."
He's
I
good.
Refuse to engage.
He just should be top 3 in voting right now. He's good though. Mike Trout, for the listeners, in case you don't know what we're talking about, he's having like the 15th best season of all the outfielders. And I guess name recognition, I guess it finally caught up to Mike Trout. He's finally getting the claim he deserves. We'll see if it lands on when the actual final ballots drop. I think Randy should take his spot in the All-Star game, personally.
Yeah. I mean, he's also just cool. But in fairness, if you've been like the best player in the sport for like 6 years, I think if you're having a middling start by your standards, it's kind of understandable. He said,
sure, let's make it a participation trophy from the last half decade. Sure, let's put A-Rod in the game. He was good in 2009 during that World Series run. Let's put Alex Rodriguez in the game. Just put anyone in at that point.
You are a mean lad, aren't you? Just very, very mean. Just hateful in a lot of ways, some might say.
Bird got Triple Crown on his resume. Let's put him as a starter. He should be starting at first base. If it's just legacy award at this point, why not? But that's enough on my tangent. I think you were going to make a point about the NL ballot, maybe the outfield. I don't know. I think I cut you off.
That National League outfield is where my initial beef sets in. Yes. And I will say that both of us have beef. I have beef right now. The leading vote getters are number 1, Ronald Acuña Jr. He's got over 1 billion votes. Guess what? Makes sense. He's been great. He's lit. Listener of my show had a little bit of a problem with me saying he hasn't been as great defensively. He hasn't. Not awful, but you're just a little surprising given how many tools he has. Then Mookie Betts, number 2. Mm-hmm. And then I will say this. When people see this name immediately, they're going to be like, what?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? In fairness, he has had a pretty great year. It was one of the reasons why your team's in first place. But Lourdes Gurriel Jr. being ahead of Juan Soto, Corbin Carroll, and Fernando Tatis Jr. is pretty wild. Now, I will say this. I do think you have the leg up. But he's new, which is why Corbin Carroll probably isn't getting the same recognition. And Tatis, because of his flair and overall popularity and the fact that he's become such a great defensive player, I think and that's been really surprising for people, considering he was, started as a shortstop, and that he's been electric in the outfield, probably going to win a Gold Glove for right field at this rate. And that's not hyperbole. It's true. But I will say, man, I think that we both have beef for this one. I will say with Soto, if you want to demote him, really bad first half and not a good defensive player, even if his offensive stuff is otherworldly. And then with Carroll, who currently by F4, he said, he wants me to say it. In terms of F4, he is tied currently for the highest total of all qualified position players in all of baseball, not just the National League, but the American League as well. That's how good Corbin Carroll has been. And in my opinion, I know he doesn't have like the pizzazz. He doesn't have the name recognition, the panache. Yes. But you know what? I mean, if you're the leader in that category and the team is good and has been probably one of the bigger risers this year, absent Tampa, I think you got to be in there. I have no beef with Betts or Acuna, but Lourdes Gurriel, who should probably make an All-Star appearance at this rate, I think it's got to be one of those guys.
Yeah, I totally agree. Lourdes Gurriel is.
I agree.
I agree. Everything you said, I retweet. Lourdes Gurriel is way deserving of an All-Star appearance. I just don't think he should be the starter, which I think is both how we feel. Because Gurriel, if you match him up after Carroll, Acuna, and Betts, if you put Gurriel's stats against any NL outfielder, he's probably got better stats than all of them. So he probably should make the All-Star game, but he shouldn't make it and be voted in as a starter over his own teammate, Corbin Carroll, who is maybe the hottest player in baseball over the last 3 weeks. I did a podcast, Javi, a couple of weeks ago where I broached the question, is it crazy to just put a couple sprinkles down on Corbin Carroll to win MVP? At the time, he was plus 20,000, Javi. You could put $1 down and win like $2,000. Now, if you go check those FanDuel odds, he's like top 5 in odds on FanDuel. Like, you don't get good return now if you bet on Corbin Carroll, because you look at the numbers, like you just said, F4, he leads all OPS for National League outfielders as well. He's on pace for like 35 bombs, like 45 stolen bases. Like, Corbin Carroll is having himself a fantastic season, an MVP type season, and we're trying to speak into existence, make him the third player ever win a rookie and an MVP in the same season. The last one was Ichiro back in 2001. So it would be a pretty rare air if he did it. Will it be near impossible? Yes, because guys like Acuna are having fantastic seasons. Guys like Freddie Freeman are having fantastic seasons. But Corbin Carroll should be voted in as a starter. I just feel like, or the way you're saying, it's just the fact that he's a rookie. He's not. It's still the D-backs. Despite the D-backs having the best record in the NL, they're still not in the national consciousness. Teams, or not teams, fans and media, and just like the casual person, still is not checking in on the D-backs day to day, right? You're not checking in probably on the Pittsburgh Pirates, even though they might lead the NL Central. No one's gonna talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates as like true contenders right now or have meaningful conversations about them. The D-backs, even though they have the best record in the NL, I don't think there's too many conversations just among casual baseball fans about the D-backs. And I think that's probably a big reason why Corbin Carroll isn't more talked about. But I think as the season grows, I think by the second, third ballot drops, if we have another ballot drop, I do think Corbin Carroll will see those numbers rise in the All-Star voting. And hopefully he makes it in as a starter because he's more than deserving. But do you feel like any of your San Diego Padres might make it? Like, outside of your one representative, how many Padres do you think potentially could make it?
Look, I will say, and this might sound a little crazy, but just based on who else is there, I do think that you could see potentially maybe a spot for Ha-Seong Kim open up at second base. It's going to be hard. I think he would be like he's not going to beat out Luis Reyes, but because of the defense, because of just the possible international popularity, maybe there's a little bit of a feeling there. And then maybe at third base, just because absent Nolan Arenado, who only got hot recently with Austin Riley and Max Muncy, JD Davis, Manny Machado maybe has a potential to make it. But if the voting's closing so soon, he's been so bad out of the start so far this year that I doubt he's going to see it. And otherwise, it's pretty obvious. Josh Hader will probably be an all-star. He should be. He's probably been one of the best relief pitchers. I haven't checked in a little bit, but in the game, he's been elite. And I think Tatis and Soto will make it, even if it is potentially as reserves, which is totally fine in my opinion. I think it's 10 times more fun to have Tatis in there over some other guys. But in terms of just who earned it, this is where philosophy comes in, right? Like, what do you want to see? Do you want to see a guy who's just fun? I'm all for that. And as I knock over my Tatis bobblehead, I am of the approach that if the discrepancy between the players isn't that big, just vote for who's cool. You know what I mean? And for me, that would be Tatis. But in fairness, coming off the suspension, and the D-backs are a great team, and I think it's cool to celebrate them and get these really up-and-coming superstar players like a little bit more in the national spotlight. But I also wouldn't blame anyone if they were like, you know what? Tatis was playing choir orchestrator in the outfield against the Yankees fans because they were chanting steroids. He is sick and he's been great, so put him in. I don't care about Corbin Carroll. Give me a break. I would understand that line of thinking as well. Not that it is mine, but I understand.
I mean, yeah, I totally agree. The MLB All-Star game at the end of the day is entertainment. So if we want to go in the direction, I do feel like you're probably going to get a Tatis in the game just because he's so much fun. I think you'll probably get a Soto too, just because they both are putting up All-Star level numbers. They're both superstars, recognizable faces in the game. Like, that's the thing with the Padres. They have like 5 dudes like every MLB fan would know. Obviously, their season hasn't gone the way you would have wanted, but they still got recognizable stars who are putting up some decent stats. So I think the Tatises and the Sotos of the world still have pretty good arguments to make the All-Star game. But there is one other position on the ballot that I do have a little bit of a gripe with, Javi, Reyes. But before we get there, I first want to talk to our listeners about Game Time. Hold on. Where's my ad read? Because Game Time is the best place to buy tickets, because buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's get back into the podcast, because there is one other position I just want to touch on a little bit, Javier Reyes, because if you look at the National League shortstop position, it is incredibly weak this year with the field.
Yeah.
Because the National League has stars at shortstop, but they're just all underperforming this year. Currently, Orlando Arcia of the Braves is leading it, but there's a little guy 8th currently in voting, who I think is having the best season at shortstop. I don't think he'll get voted in as a starter for the same reasons as Corbin Carroll, because people don't talk about the D-backs enough. I got my little homer take here. Geraldo Perdomo at 128,000 votes. I know people are looking at the ballot. They're like, who the hell is that? Listen, as a D-backs fan, every day we're like, how is Perdomo doing this? How does he keep getting these 2-out RBI singles and everything? This is a breakout season that no one saw coming. I was pretty much writing off Perdomo as like a legit offense player before the season. Now he's turned into one of the clutchest players in baseball. And I just feel like when you're thinking about RBI run producers on one of the best teams in Major League Baseball, Perdomo just deserves a little bit more respect. But Javi, how does it feel to see your guy Francisco Lindor number 2, despite him having a pretty down season?
Yeah, I mean, with Lindor, I will say with Lindor that it's there are, and as you know, I'm a Lindor expert. That is one of my favorite players. The batting average isn't great. The on base isn't great, but his BABIP is around like 230 right now, and his lifetime is at least around 300. So like that suggests that the batting average on base numbers will get better. He's had some timely home runs. Don't get me wrong, not bad. And the big thing that's carrying his overall win total above replacement has been his defense, which is still great. But I will say that Orlando Arcia playing some pretty good defense over at short for Atlanta. So I think that does count for something. But it's also true, like what you said, like it's been surprisingly weak. This is probably the number 1 category in the NL where if you showed this to someone like preseason, the fact that like Trey Turner isn't even in the top 5 is wild. Like, and deservedly so. He's been basically Isaiah Kiner-Falefa so far. Like he's been pretty bad outside, like last week when he hit that 2 home run game. Like he's been like the man. I mean, talk about like a bust of a free agent class. So he's been pretty bad, but it's just shocking, right? Xander Bogaerts being 3rd, Lindor being 2nd. Dansby Swanson, fine year so far. He's been pretty solid. You know what I mean? In terms of F4 rankings, though, you know who needs to be brought up, man?
Oh,
I hate to say it.
Uh-oh.
Thairo Estrada. of the
Oh,
San
yeah.
Francisco Giants, man. He's been pretty okay. 2.54 F4, I believe, leads the position, which is wild. And he's not even in the top 5 of voting. So that would be one that at least has to be brought up there. In fairness, he's one of those names that I think a lot of people have seen for a while. And like, yeah, he's an average player. And they just kind of forget to look up how he's doing this year, very understandably so. So he kind of gets a little bit left behind. So I think that would be a guy who at least needs to vault into the top 5. I know San Fran's a pretty boring team to talk about. There's not like all that much fun on that team, even if they've got some pretty good players. But I think he at least needs to get mentioned. And Dansby Swanson, if you want to vote him for sheer factor of him being one of the only top free agents from this class so far that hasn't like just completely cratered, then I would understand you want to give him like bonus points for that. That might be my pick. Just being like Trey Turner, Bogarts to an extent, even if it's injury. You have the Manny Machado extension. You have these pitchers. You have everybody who's been struggling. And Dansby said, not me. So I'd give him a little bit of points for that. Even if it's not a statistically based argument, I would still kind of give him a little bit of plus points for that.
Yeah, and the thing with the San Francisco Giants, I don't know why, but whenever you bring up their players who perform well, like the Lamont Ways, the Thairo Estradas, it just feels like they're a team of like super utility, like Ben Zobrist type players. Like I don't consider like one player on the team. It just feels like every dude plays like 8 positions for them, and they just have like a bunch of veterans and guys who've been around, but it doesn't feel like they have like any pillars or like foundational guys. I think that's like one of the reasons why we don't like really resonate with any of the Giants players. Like who's like the Giants player that you would even resonate with right now? Like who's their pillar? Like Logan Webb? Who's their foundational piece that they have?
Probably for me, it would be Michael Conforto because I was begging the Padres to sign him this offseason. But other than that, yeah, they're just, like you said, a team of like really solid utility guys, a bunch of players every team would kind of want, right? But not necessarily the only type of players that teams want. They're really lacking a star, which is why I think they were so aggressive in free agency this offseason. I think they knew we've got some good tertiary pieces. There I go, using that word again. But we don't have like the big guy. And maybe I haven't used it with you, but I've used it a lot with like other hosts and whatnot. And people have left comments, but yeah. So I'm hopeful that some of the San Francisco Giants guys get at least a little bit of love. Like Lamont Wade is not even like, I don't even think in any like part of voting like whatsoever. So I would have to check that again. He's like a first base outfielder, so maybe he's got some. Is he at first base? Does he have any votes? Let's see. No, he's not even at first base. So like Lamont Wade, man, he's got a 400 on base right now. So that's pretty impressive. He's basically been Juan Soto at the plate. You know what I mean? Like basically he has been. But for him not to even have any like in the top voting area, that is strictly because of name stuff, unfortunately for him. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he's been as bad as Soto defensively. I'm going to check quickly some stats, but
who is he listed at? Is he listed as a first baseman or he's listed as a first baseman on here.
He's listed as first baseman. Well, even if it's first baseman, he's behind Freddie, Pete Alonso, Matt Olson, Paul Goldschmidt, and Trey Mancini, which I get it.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
Those are pretty good names, especially Freddie. Unfortunately, the Polar Bear probably, going to lose votes. It might not even play in the game because of his recent injury, but it's still shocking to me. So maybe like you said, though, maybe Lamont Wade is the victim of just being in a stacked category. Like when, J.K. Simmons was nominated for Whiplash. Like there was a lot of good performers that year, but unfortunately, you guys, it's going to J.K. Simmons. It's memorable. It was an iconic performance, and it's a tough beat, as they would say. So tough beat for Lamont Wade.
Yeah, that's first base in NL is pretty stacked. Lamont's 4th in OPS, and it's still behind Freeman, Alonso, Goldschmidt. Like you said, you still got Matt Olson in there. You even got Spencer Strier from the Cincinnati Reds is having a good year. Like first base is kind of loaded in the NL this year. The American League first base, I know Vladdy's leading it right now. That's a little bit of an entertainment thing because I don't think he's having the greatest season. Is he putting up all-star level numbers? Sure. I think Yandy Diaz,
he's good.
Spiritually, should probably take it. I mean, he just having the best season.
I love Yandy. I love Yandy.
If it's like Yandy versus Vlad, you're just going to lose that every time.
Vlad's a good player, obviously, but this is like my Millard Thomas, Mike Trout type of take.
Okay.
Like he's basically had 1 year where he's been a superstar level player. You know what I mean? Last year, good season. This year, good season. Even if sometimes great, but especially at first base, you want a little bit more. Just saying. No. Just throwing it out there. You know what I mean? I just feel like he's he's got a little bit of that like early Bryce Harper thing going, where like it's gonna happen. I have no doubt that like that year is gonna happen again. I know he did it 2 years ago, but I think it's gonna happen again. But in fairness, it hasn't quite happened yet, so it's more like the hype and the potential is kind of carrying his name, at least in my opinion. I mean, what has he got this year? 0.7 F4, 123 WRC plus. It's good, but it's not like that's the top 5 pick in your fantasy draft. You know what I mean? Like that's not quite it. But he's also just cool because who also doesn't like saying Vladdy? Just a sick name. I mean, come on.
Great name. Who's really your Vladdy? One of the team names in our little fantasy league, right?
I know.
There we go. That's not either one of us, but it is a shout out, I guess, if you want a quick shout out from our fantasy league.